Hello and welcome to our discussion today. We want to take a look at procrastination. Today, we want to look at how to overcome procrastination. So, overcoming procrastination. That's what we'll be focusing on today. So, for our outline, we'll look at what procrastination entails, some theories around procrastination, and then we'll look at how to develop effective habits, how to track progress, and then some tools for effective tracking, right? I think that this was, I'll work it out. So sorry about that. That was an omission. So we'll look at these in our discussion today. So if we say procrastination, it is a widespread challenge, right? And it's found everywhere, at work, when it comes to school, in relationships, whatever happens or wherever we find ourselves, in most of the cases, you realize that you may tend to procrastinate. So procrastination is a widespread challenge, okay, in everyday life, in academia, in professional life. And you realize that procrastination is such that it reduces an individual's productivity. Okay, so once an individual starts to procrastinate, then it means that that person's productivity is decreased. Procrastination also increases stress because as the individual postpones what they have to do or pushes what they have to do to a later date, you realize that by the time they are ready to do whatever activity they set out to do, they have already packed a lot of things at that time. And so it tends to increase stress. And then you will also notice that procrastination can impede an individual's long-term success. So if, for example, you want to achieve a very significant feat in some years' time, maybe 5 years or 10 years, as you procrastinate on a daily basis, you realize that the long-term goal in 5 years or in 10 years may not be achieved because you kept postponing and postponing. So procrastination reduces productivity, it increases stress, and then it also impedes long-term success. So it's important that individuals or people maintain focus. It's important that as we set timelines to accomplish tasks or as we set timelines to get things done, it is important that we maintain focus. Okay, it's important that we do what we are set to do. However, it's difficult. Difficult in the sense that there are distractions, and these distractions can be positive, they can be internal distractions, and they can also be external distractions. Distractions which are coming from the individual himself or distractions that are coming from the environment of that individual. Okay, so it's important to note that procrastination is not equal to laziness. So it's not right to say that people who procrastinate are lazy. In fact, in most of the cases, people who procrastinate are not most of the times lazy, right? It's just that they feel the work can be done at a later time. Okay, it's not because they don't want to do the work. So procrastination is also not a it's not merely just it's not like people are not able to manage their time well. It is not a time management issue. So uh, once we know that procrastination is not a laziness issue, it's also important to know that it is not a time management issue. In most of the cases, you realize that people procrastinate because it's a psychological thing, or it is based on how they behave or how they do things. So procrastination from the literature is rooted in psychological and behavioral patterns. Okay, so based on how people think and based on how they behave, they are likely going to be procrastinating on the tasks that are handed over to them. So, in today's discussion, we'll look at procrastination in four theoretical frameworks. Okay, so we'll look at the procrastination equation. Then we'll also look at perfectionism and self-criticism, okay, which in most of the cases lead to task avoidance. We'll also look at procrastination as a form of self-sabotage. And then the last framework we'll consider is the role of distraction and the lack of self-regulation. So these are the theoretical lenses that will help us to discuss the concept of procrastination. So the first one we look at is the procrastination equation. And this is based on the temporal motivation theory, right? And here you will notice that the temporal motivation theory, okay, on which the procrastination equation is based, states that motivation is equal to expectancy times the value of the activity divided by the impulsiveness of the individual times the delay. Okay, so you'll notice that in a case where the impulsiveness and delay is big, or you have a high level of impulsiveness and you also have a high level of delay, or how the time within which to get the reward of whatever task is high, then it affects the motivation, and so then procrastination will set in. Okay, so in the equation we see expectancy, we see value, we see impulsiveness, and we see delay. Okay, and it says that expectancy times value divided by impulsiveness times delay is equal to motivation, right? So if the motivation is high, then the individual will not procrastinate. But if the motivation is low, then the individual will procrastinate. Okay, so expectancy here is basically the belief that the individual can succeed in whatever activity or task has been assigned. So depending on the work to be done or the task to be done, if the individual knows that he will succeed, then the expectancy is high. And so it will result in possibly a high motivation, and therefore the desire to procrastinate may not be so high. Okay, so expectancy is the belief that you can succeed in whatever task that you have been assigned. Then value is the importance of the task, or how that individual enjoys the task that he has been assigned. So the value is the importance that individual places on the task, or how enjoyable the task is. And then impulsiveness refers to the susceptibility to distraction, or how quickly the individual can be distracted when he's performing the task. Okay, so if that individual can easily be distracted, then it means that the possibility of procrastination is high. Okay, then the delay focuses on how far the reward is. So if the activity is such that the individual sees reward in maybe after 2 years or after 3 years, then it's likely that they may procrastinate that task. But if the reward is close, or maybe the reward is such that it can be realized in a few days or in some hours, you notice that then procrastination would not exist at all. So according to the procrastination equation, the level of motivation depends on the expectancy times the value of the task divided by the impulsiveness or how easy it is to be distracted times how far the reward is from the individual. So what this means is that if a task is not really enjoyable, right, and the task is such that the individual does not really like how the activity is going, and the task is also such that the rewards are long term. It's like the rewards cannot be enjoyed at the moment, but will take time to be enjoyed. Then you realize that that activity, the possibility for that individual to postpone the task is high. Okay. On the other hand, if the individual enjoys the task and also has the the task is also such that the rewards can be enjoyed in a short time. So like he has to work for a week or a day and get to experience the reward or the results, then that individual will not postpone the task. Okay. And you realize that in that case, then once the person enjoys the task, then they would not postpone. But if they are not enjoying the task and the task is also such that the rewards are delayed, then they would procrastinate. Okay. So what do you do in that case? It is important that for an individual assigned a task, okay, it is important that you let that individual know how valuable the task is, value inherent in the task, okay, and also try as much as possible to reduce the delay. So, for example, if the person would realize results in a year or in 2 years, it is important that you help the individual to set clear goals, or the individual himself sets clear goals, okay, so that for every milestone that is achieved, they get to feel good about themselves, right? Because the goal setting helps to also put in place reward systems. So, for example, if a task that will take a year has been broken down into quarterly milestones, then you'll notice that after every quarter, there would be some kind of reward. And so the individual gets to enjoy some reward, even if it is not much. There's some motivation to continue with the task. It's also important that major tasks are broken down into smaller milestones so that individuals who are very impulsive can also get to enjoy the smaller milestones that they have set for themselves. Okay. So basically, this is for the procrastination equation. Then another framework is the perfectionism and self-criticism. So it's important to know that for some individuals, okay, they would want to do things and get it right like the first time. Okay, they call themselves perfectionists. All right, doesn't want to do anything that would be that would have faults or that will come with errors. There are people like that. So for people like that who are perfectionists and have high levels of self-criticism, most of the times they have unrealistic standards. They try to do things in a way that will be flawless. But in most cases, you would realize that it's difficult to complete a task without any errors or without any flaws. Okay, so they tend to set unrealistic standards for themselves. And based on these that they set for themselves, there's something you call the paralysis by analysis. So you realize that after analyzing the task over and over again, and after going through how they want to get it done and how they would avoid all of the mistakes, you realize that they tend to even paralyze themselves. It is difficult to even take the first step because in their minds, the thing has become so complicated. Okay. And because of that, you realize that such individuals delay tasks. Okay, they delay the start of the task because it's not like they are lazy or they don't know what to do, but they are anxious and they feel that they would not be able to do, or they will not be able to perform their task in a perfect way. Okay, so based on that, such individuals delay the start of the tasks that are assigned to them. And the key concepts here are the evaluation anxiety. Okay, so in their minds, they have assessed the situation and they are thinking of the negative judgment that is likely to come from the external environment in a situation where they fail. Okay, so in getting the work done, they want to think about, so what will happen if it doesn't go as planned, or what will happen if I'm not able to perform as planned, and that results in anxiety. Okay, there's also catastrophizing, where they exaggerate the fear of making mistakes. Okay, like there'll be a problem or something will happen if they make mistakes, or maybe they'll be laughed at, or maybe people are going to tease them, or people are going to mock them when they make mistakes. Okay, so because of that, there's that fear and the fear of making mistakes in their mind. And it's not just, it's so much exaggerated that it becomes so huge in their minds. And then the last concept is the over-identification with the outcome of or whatever task it is. Okay, so you'll notice that the individual feels that his self-worth or her self-worth is tied to the results that he or she is going to get on completion of the task. So that if the task does not yield the expected results, then they feel that they have failed as individuals. It's difficult to separate the task from, but they tend to identify with them. Okay. So what then is the implication? You will realize that people who have this characteristic, or people who are perfectionists, they avoid tasks. Okay, and they do this to be able to protect themselves from failure and disappointment. So in order for them not to fail, in order for them not to deliver results below standard, they better want to stay away. And so they will not take the initiative at all. If there's a task that has to be accomplished, this individual feels that he will not be able, or she will not be able to deliver excellent results. And so if that is the case, they won't even try at all. Okay. So what can be done in this is to help the individual, all right, to self understand that it's better to have a good enough completed task, right, than a perfect task that is never accomplished. So you can have a concept in your mind, and as perfect as that concept is, so far as it remains in your mind, then it is of no use. But if you can put down something, or if you can get something done, and what you did is good enough, it is much, much better than keeping the perfect concept in your mind. Okay, so it's important that we understand the good enough standards rather than the perfection standards. It's difficult to attain perfection, if not impossible. Okay, so it's good to know, or it's important to know, that as an individual, if you are assigned a task, you do your best, the best you can in that given time. And you should be fine with that. And don't be too hard on yourself. Okay. Don't criticize yourself too much if you deliver results that are below your expectations. Learn from your mistakes and then you move on as an individual. Okay. Then you have the self-sabotage theory. Okay. Here, procrastination is seen as a defense mechanism, right? And what individuals do with the self-sabotage theory is that once they delay the work, right, or once they are not performing the task that has been assigned, then it makes you know that really there's no time to get the work done. Okay, so rather than doing the work, they would give excuses why the work cannot be done. So excuses from the fact that they do not have time, or the task is too difficult to be done, and all of that. Okay. So that in giving those excuses, they tend to they use that as a cover up. So in a case where the the activity or the task is not well done, they can say, ah, I told you that I didn't have enough time, or I told you that I was busy, or I told you that da 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 da. Okay, so people use the self-sabotage theory, and no, people use procrastination, sorry, as a defense mechanism. Okay, so once the work is done and it's not well done, then they can have a good excuse to give you as to why the work was not done well, right? So there are some ideas here. You have the self-handicapping, where the individual creates barriers to success so that they can externalize the blame, right? So if they are able to create barriers, the deadline is too short, or the work is too much, is too loaded, I cannot finish the task in this time. Once they create those barriers, then when the time elapses and the work has not been well done, they can externalize the blame and blame every other thing but themselves. Okay. Another idea here is the ego protection. You realize that people who procrastinate based on the self-sabotage theory, they maintain a sense of competence, all right, and self-worth, because they feel that as they give the excuse, the external excuse, it it makes people not look at them as the problem, or not focus on them as the reason for not getting the work done, but the external factors that are being blamed, like time and how difficult the task is and everything. Okay. And with this, you notice that people tend to focus on short-term mood improvements rather than focusing on getting the work done, which would help to meet your long-term goals. People tend to focus on how happy they will feel in the short term. Because if he gets the work done and the work is not well done, and he tells you, ah, but I told you I didn't have so much time. It's like he has proven the point that all this while what he was telling you was actually the case, rather than getting all of those off the path and getting the work done like it has to be done, which will help him or her to achieve long-term goals. So you will notice that with the self-sabotage theory, procrastination helps to avoid the short-term discomfort that the the people would have Okay, so rather than being anxious and getting the work done, the excuses are given. So he's able to blame all the other external factors, and then he feels good. So the individual feels good in the short term, but you realize that in the long term there is a lot of stress, because if that activity is such that it has to be done no matter what, then in the long term it will be done, and maybe at that time there will be a lot more stress than in the present situation. So think of, for example, you have to write an exam and you think you don't have enough time to prepare for the exam. So in the short term, you do just anything and then you write the exam and you fail. You notice that it is good to say, there wasn't enough time to prepare well, and that is why I failed. Okay, you will feel good about yourself. But if that exam is such that you cannot progress without passing that exam, no matter how long it takes, you would have to come back and complete that paper before you can progress. So you realize that for the long term, it would have had a negative impact on you as an individual, right? So what can be done here with the self-sabotage theory of procrastination is to shift the mindset from protecting your ego in the short term, right, to embracing growth and efforts that will help you to succeed in the long term. Okay, it's important. So rather than looking at the comfort in the short term, focus on really getting the work done and getting it done well, which will affect your long-term goal. Then the last framework we look at is the impulsivity and the present bias. Okay, the present bias. So people are biased towards immediate rewards, and most of the times will rather look down on future benefits. Okay, so when this happens, when people focus on present rewards as against the future benefits, it leads to procrastination. So you realize that for tasks whose benefits are long term, the individual will not try working on those tasks. You rather go and work on the ones which are can satisfy and give immediate rewards. Okay. All right. So you realize that for when this happens, people tend to outweigh immediate rewards over over future rewards. Okay, so if you put two tasks that have to be performed, people with this bias would go for the one that will yield immediate results and then put down the ones that will yield future results. So they'll try to shift the ones that will yield future rewards to a later time before that task is done. Okay. So there's also the time inconsistency where people reverse their preferences over time. Okay, so where sometimes people plan to do things. So in the course of the week, there are things that the individual has planned that he would do. But you realize that by the end of the week, if you actually check what the individual has done versus what he planned to do, there are some activities on the to-do list that have not been done. So if you look through well, you see that the ones which have been done are ones which the individual feels would bring immediate benefits, and those which are pending are those that will give the long-term benefits. And so those ones on the to-do list have not been done, right? It's therefore important to have ways to determine or to decide what to do. So whether present benefits or future benefits, there are tools that will help the individual to plan the activities that have to be done, so that there is a reduction in the temptation to put away the tasks that come with future rewards and not immediate results or immediate rewards. So the implication here is that when people intend to work at a later time, they fail to follow through, right? So if you have an action to be done or a task to perform and you focus on doing it at a later time, it's difficult to get the task done because there are other short tasks that will take shorter time to complete. And so once you start with those ones, you are more likely to do those ones that you are tempted to finish quickly and get immediate rewards than to follow through and finish with the tasks that would come with much larger and future rewards. So like I said earlier, it is important to use commitment devices. So on yourself, or you can have someone help you with deadlines, okay, on when to complete particular tasks. You can also decide to be working in groups, okay, so that your friends can be a check on you, so that if some activity has not been done, that friend can prompt you or they can help you to go back and get their work done. And then you also, as much as possible, have to reduce how distractions are accessible to you. Okay. So if it's social media, if it's your phone, if it's your friends, whatever it is that becomes a distraction to your completion of a task, you may want to push it away. There are several times that you are in the middle of a very serious thing and then a friend visits you. Okay, you realize that the possibility of pushing away the work you were doing and attend to the friend, maybe go out with a friend, is high, right? But you realize that at the end of the day, that becomes a distraction. Okay, so as much as possible, it's important that when you're involved in a task, to reduce procrastination, you reduce the accessibility of distractions to you. So in this table, you have a summary of all that we have discussed. You have the impulsivity plus delay, okay, the equation, you have the perfectionism, the ego protection, and then the present bias. We have discussed all of this. I believe that it will help you to summarize all that we have discussed if there is the need. So based on all the frameworks we have considered and looking at the theories that we have discussed, we'll look at some causes of procrastination, right? And the first one is impulsivity. So the reason why some people would procrastinate is, number one, the fact that they have a preference for short-term gratification, right? Or have looking out for immediate rewards or immediate benefits from the task. And so if the task is such that it is not coming with any immediate benefit, then they would rather push it away. Okay. Then the second cause of procrastination is the fear of failure. Okay. And we looked at this in the in the situation where people, based on the criticisms that's likely to come from the environment, if they fail, then they would not take on the task at all. Okay, so anxiety about how inadequate or how ill prepared they are for the task will make them want to procrastinate, or they feel that people are going to criticize them if they fail. And so because of that, they wouldn't want to start the task at all. Then another cause of procrastination is perfectionism, where people set unrealistic standards for themselves. So based on how perfect they want the results to be, they see that there are a lot of flaws, or they see that there are a lot of things that can go wrong. And so because of that, they will not even start at all. Okay, so people set unrealistic goals, unrealistic standards for themselves, and it most of the times gets in the way, and so it's difficult for them to even initiate the task. All right. And then another cause of procrastination is cognitive overload. Sometimes the individual just has a lot on his or her table. There are a lot of things to be done in a limited time. And so, based on that, he has to avoid some of the tasks and focus on the others. So, cognitive overload can sometimes cause procrastination. And then the last cause of procrastination is a lack of structure. Okay. People have a very high inertia because there's no plan. They have not planned. So if, for example, there's an activity to be done, that task or that activity looks very big in the eye of that individual, and they are not able to plan as to even how to start, what to do next, and the next, and the next. And so it becomes a huge task. And because of that, the resistance to start the work is very high. Okay. So these are some causes of procrastination. So how do you overcome procrastination? All right. What are some of the strategies to overcome procrastination? So the first one is the implementation intentions. Okay. Where the individual has to make plans or put in place a structure that will help you to accomplish the tasks. So you ask yourself questions, okay, questions that will help you to initiate the activity or to start the activity. So ask yourself, what has to be done? Where do I have to do it? When does it have to be done? How do I do it? Okay, so in answering all of these questions, you are able to come up with a plan, and that plan is what will help you to implement the intentions that you have. Otherwise, they will remain intentions or they will remain ideas in your mind, and you will keep procrastinating until eternity. But it's important that you implement the intentions by making specific plans. So ask yourself these questions, and that is what will help to be able to get something started. There's also the 5-minute rule, okay, where you commit to just 5 minutes of work. What happens is that when you commit to just 5 minutes of work, it helps to push the drive you have to finish what you start. So if you have 5 minutes to complete a task or 5 minutes to do something, okay, once you start, determine that you would finish what you have started, okay, and that can help with procrastination. All right. And then the third strategy is self-compassion. It is very important that you, the individual, you help yourself. If for some reason you did something and it did not go well, don't let that thing stand in the way, okay? Forgive yourself. If you messed up in the past or if you did not meet the standards in the past, forget about it. Forgive yourself and try again, okay? Don't feel guilty and so much so that guilt stands in the way. You are not able to start something else because you failed an initial task. Okay, so forgive past delays to reduce the guilt on yourself and help motivate you to try something else. Okay, so have compassion on yourself. And then also use some incentives. Okay, so you give yourself immediate rewards. How do you give yourself immediate rewards? By setting milestones for yourself and giving yourself incentives when you are able to complete a particular milestone, okay, so that you'll be able to maintain engagement. Otherwise, sometimes if you are waiting for the very big one, before you reward yourself, you tend to be demotivated or you tend to lose engagement with the task altogether. So it's important that you give yourself milestones, break the task into small bits so that when you achieve a feat, you reward yourself. Okay, so some of the strategies to overcome procrastination are the implementation intentions, the 5 minute rule, the self compassion, and then immediate rewards. So, how do you develop effective habits? Okay, there's what you call the habit stacking, right? It's important that as you do something and it produces the rewards, you attach it to an existing routine. Okay. So for example, every morning when you wake up, you maybe you jog, right? You jog in the morning for about 30 minutes for every day. And whilst jogging, you would want to be listening to your lecture notes. So what you do is that since the jogging is an existing routine and you want to attach, you want to start something, listen to your lecture notes in the morning, what you have to do is possibly get your earpiece so that when you are going for your early morning jogging, you also be listening to your lecture notes. Okay, so you realize that with time, you will form a habit of not only jogging in the morning, but also jogging and listening to your lecture notes in the morning. Okay, so that's what you call the habit stacking. Then you have consistency. It's important to note that to form a habit, it takes approximately 66 days to form a habit. So, for example, if you start doing this routine jog whilst listening to your lecture notes, you would have to do that consistently for about 66 days. Then it becomes a part of you. Okay, so if you find something positive that you want that thing to become a habit, they need to be consistent at doing the thing. Okay. And then after about 66 days, you are sure that that thing would be a part of you. So then you would have formed a habit on that particular activity. Okay. It has become a part of you. It has become one of your habits. And then it's also important to check your environment, right? Get to know the places where you find yourself. If the environment is such that you'll be easily distracted, then it means that it will go against your desire or your plan to stop procrastinating. Okay, so it's important that the environment is such that it will enhance your focus and help you to concentrate on tasks that you are involved in. And then, as much as possible, we have spoken about the Pomodoro technique, okay, the 25 minutes, 5 minutes rule, right? It's important to have a structured system where you work continuously for some time, okay, 25 minutes, and then you take 5 minutes break, right? Consistently for some time, and then you take some time off to just rejuvenate. So those structured breaks help you to focus when you come back to the task. Once you start building the effective habits, it's essential to track your progress, right? And one way to track your progress is to set goals for yourself. So get to know where you would be or what you would do at some point. So maybe in the next month, this is what I want to achieve, right? And we have spoken about SMART goals. Your goals have to be clear, they have to be measurable. And as much as possible, the goals should be such that they will motivate you to work. Okay. And you can use apps or journals to help you to track the progress that you are making. So you can have a little journal or a little notebook, okay, that you keep your records in. And that will help you to know what you have done, what is pending, what has to be done, okay, and how quickly you are going. The journal or apps will also help you to adjust your strategy if needed. Okay, so maybe you are trying out something and it's not really producing the results that you expect from it. The journal or the app will help you to re-strategize and come up with the best to do. Okay, so you can use the journal. You can also use your apps, that is, if you have them on your phone or on your laptop, right? So to conclude, we say that procrastination comes from deeper psychological patterns. So procrastination is not just laziness. We can't say people who procrastinate are lazy. There are reasons why they procrastinate, and those reasons can be psychological or behavioral. So it's not just that they are lazy or they don't like planning. So it's important to combine the cognitive awareness with strategy, okay, with actionable strategies. All right. Otherwise, people will just be procrastinating and we label them or tag them, but it's not just their plan, or it's not like they want to procrastinate. All right. And as individuals, it's important to know what triggers your procrastination. Is it perfectionism? All right. Or is it what exactly triggers your procrastination? If you know as an individual what triggers your procrastination, then you would know how to handle these triggers when they come up. All right. And it's also important to apply structured strategies. We discussed some of the strategies, the 5-minute rule. We looked at the 25-5, okay, the Pomodoro technique. Apply some of these strategies to help you to be able to overcome procrastination. And in this day of technology, if you want to focus, technology can help you to focus. And if you are not careful, the same technology can also become a distraction. So it's important that you know when you need technology to help you to focus and when technology is becoming a distraction. And then you also need to focus on consistent habits, right? So if you start something and it's producing the results you need, remember that you have to be consistent with what you have started in order to build a habit around it. And from time to time, sit back, okay? Focus on what has been done, reflect on what has been done, and then you would know whether you are on course or you have to make changes to your strategies or whatever it is that has to be done. And then you may also want to use some tools that we mentioned, apps, or even your notebook, okay, to check yourself, measure your progress and how far you have gone. So for today's activity, it's actually an individual one, okay? This, in as much as we are going to discuss it in class, I also want you to apply it to yourself. So as an individual, you need to, based on all we have discussed so far, you would want to answer these questions. The first one is, what procrastination triggers do you personally experience? I want you to write it down. And then you also answer the strategy or tool that we have discussed today that you can apply immediately. So which of the strategies have we discussed that will help you to mitigate the triggers, all right, to deal or to handle the triggers of procrastination? So which strategy can you apply? And then the third one is, how can your environment be optimized for better focus? So look around you and look at all the things that distract you and all the things that help you to focus, and look at how that same environment can be optimized for better focus. Okay, so individually we'll get these done and then we will discuss them in class. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to seeing all of you shortly.